Hi third graders! Today we're gonna do one of my all-time favorite activities at the pond. And it's super simple, it's something you could do it if you ever visit a pond too. We're gonna take our trusty dishpan, not one you use in your kitchen. It has to be its own gross pond dishpan. And a net, or an old kitchen strainer, also never to be used in the kitchen after today. And we're just gonna scoop up from the pond and see what sort of critters we can find that are living in there. So the first thing you always wanna do is fill it up with water, because that way once you catch your bugs, they have some place to go. So get some nice water in there. Oh, we got some pond weed. And next, you scoop down for some bugs. Now, believe it or not, most of the bugs are not on the surface of the water. They're probably not even swimming around right now. Most of them are hiding in the muck at the bottom. So we're gonna get a good scoopful of muck and see what we can find. Scoop down, get some muck, and look really closely in there and see if you see anything squiggling around. Oh my gosh, I do! I see a little thing with bright red eyes. Oh, we'll talk about him later. All right, so you take your discoveries and gently turn your net inside out into the bucket. And just for good measure, I sometimes get another scoop. And again, look and see if anything's in there. Crawling around under those mucky leaves. Put it on in. All right. Now, get your plastic spoon. It actually is helpful to have a white spoon because most of the bugs are dark color. So they show up really well against this white spoon. So you just start poking around in your bucket and see if you find any critters hiding in there. One thing you'll discover right away is that they're really good hiders. They like to hide under leaves, under sticks, and they're all brown color, like dark black or brown. So they camouflage really well. Wow, this is amazing. There are things swimming around in here. So I'm gonna get, oh, in just this one scoopful of pond water, there are like 5 different bugs swimming around in here. They're tiny in just one scoop of water. Do you see them moving around and wiggling? They're crazy wigglers. One of them has those 3 tails I can see. Wow, so there's that much in just one scoop of water. Imagine how much life there is in this whole pond. Now, what we're gonna talk about today is how these animals can survive in the pond. We're going to talk about a fancy word called adaptations. You may have heard this word before. Adaptations are a part of an animal's body or a way it behaves that help it survive in its particular habitat. So for example, I could not live in this pond. An elephant could not live in this pond. A cat could not live in this pond. But all these tiny little water bugs are perfectly adapted to surviving right here. They can breathe underwater. They can find food in this pond and eat their special kind of food. They're really good at hiding and escaping predators. So all we're gonna do today is scoop in here, see who we can find, and look at their special adaptations, their special body parts that help them survive. And you're gonna find some of the wackiest things on these pond bugs. All right, so we'll see what we can find first. Let's see, oh, here's one. So this, oh, is one of my favorites. This is called a caddisfly. Now what do you notice? Watch this guy for a minute and see what's going on. This little caddisfly actually crawls out of his house. Oh, do you hear these frogs? Gotten quite loud today. So this little caddisfly makes himself a house out of whatever he finds in the bottom of the pond. So if a caddisfly lived in a pond with all pebbles, I'm gonna put this guy back, his house would be all glued together with pebbles. But in our pond, what's on the bottom is leaves and dead sticks and dead cattail junk. And it's those things that the caddisfly has glued together to make himself this house. You see that house? And he can crawl, kind of poke his head out, but then if he gets scared and needs to be protected, he just goes right back in. Kind of like a turtle goes into his shell. This guy, same thing, stays safe by going back into his house. So he can crawl out, drag his shell around with him, or go in for safety. So that is a really cool adaptation, to make yourself a protective house that'll keep you safe from predators. How awesome. All right, let's see what else we can find. This! I can't believe this guy is so big. Oh my gosh, he's practically too big for my spoon, actually. I better put him in this bucket, in this little bowl. There we go. Wow, so this is a tadpole. And one thing that's really cool about this tadpole is you can see, remember when Carrie talked to us about metamorphosis? He's changing right now from a tadpole to a frog. Do you see those little legs just starting to grow on the back? So one adaptation this guy has is that when they're tadpoles, they can breathe underwater. They don't have to come up to the surface to get air. They can breathe underwater. But when they get to be adults, the adult frogs grow lungs, and that's a good adaptation for breathing in the air. But tadpoles, who are underwater all the time, can breathe without coming up to the surface. They can breathe under the water. The other thing is, think about how good swimmers they are. Tadpoles have these wriggly tails. Look at that long tail. That helps them move really well in the water. And that's a good adaptation, because once frogs grow up and they have metamorphosis and they get to be an adult, they don't have those tails. How do they get around? What helps them swim fast? Because they're good swimmers. They have those webbed feet when they're grown-ups, when they're adults. So they don't have a tail to swim, they have webbed feet. But the tadpole right here has that good tail for helping it swim. Great adaptation for a creature that's gonna live in the water all the time. All right, let's take a look in our dishpan and see what else you can see. Just take a look and let your eyes wander and see what's wiggling around in there. All right, so we've talked about some adaptations that help animals hide and stay safe. We've talked about some adaptations that help animals move underwater. Now we're gonna talk about one of my favorites. I think it's gonna be some of your favorites. Some adaptations for eating underwater. So we're gonna start with my friend, the dragonfly larva. And we have 3 of those in this bucket. Here we go. So the dragonfly larva looks innocent enough. He fits in a spoon. He's not very big, but his nickname is Pond Monster. And that is because he eats pretty much anything in the pond that's smaller than him. He eats tadpoles, he eats all the bugs, he eats everything, even other dragonfly larvae that are smaller than him. And the way he does this is one of the coolest adaptations. I love it. He's got a special jaw. So, there's a special hinge on his jaw that lets his bottom jaw open up super wide, and then it opens up half as wide as his whole body. So that would be like if your jaw opened up all the way down to your waist and then hinges it out, shoots it out in front of him and catches prey. So it opens all the way and then hinges out. So for you, that would be like if you could open your mouth, stick it all the way in front of you and catch food. You could probably eat like a Thanksgiving turkey in one bite. That would be pretty amazing. So we made a life-size jaw. If I was a dragonfly, this would be my jaw. So it'd fold down and then shoot out this far to catch prey. So you'd be able to get a really big bite. That's an amazing adaptation. And I have to admit, for a while, I thought pond monsters, dragonfly larvae, were the coolest eating adaptation I'd ever heard of. But there's another one. There's another bug, another pond bug that has that guy beat. I think. You can decide for yourself. And we, much to my dismay, caught one of them in our bucket. I can see it here. So this is, oh geez, the larva of a predaceous diving beetle. You can already tell he looks like, you know, he means business with those jaws on the front of his mouth. So, I'm actually gonna put him in his own bowl so he doesn't eat anybody else. There we go. Now he can't eat all his friends in the bucket here. So, do you see those little pinchers on the front? This is crazy. He takes those pinchers, catches the prey, and after he's caught his prey, injects poison, venom, into the prey that dissolves its prey. So for example, if it eats a tadpole, like the poor tadpole that we just separated them so they're in their own bowls, don't worry, injects prey into that tadpole, it turns into like a tadpole smoothie, and then he sucks out all the insides and the skin of the tadpole just floats away. So he injects venom into his prey that dissolves the animal and then eats it like a smoothie. I don't know about you, but in terms of adaptations, that's pretty amazing. I can't think of a more reliable adaptation for getting your food than being able to capture it and turn it into a smoothie and suck it up. So I forgot to tell you that there's a nickname that we give to the predaceous diving beetle larva. This guy, he's nicknamed water tiger because he eats also everything in the pond. So pond monster and water tiger. It's kind of a cool world in that pond. Now, something I didn't tell you about the water tiger, look at this video of him. Look at how he swims. Do you see how he sticks his tail up to the top of the bowl? That's because he's actually breathing. So he doesn't breathe through his mouth. He sticks his tail up to the surface of the water, and that's how he gets new air. And there's, I mean, if you're gonna live in the pond, you have to have some pretty cool adaptations for breathing, for getting oxygen. I'm gonna show you one of my others, because I saw a mayfly swimming around in here. He's tiny, tiny, and hard to catch. All right. So this little mayfly, so I'll let him go down here because I need my hands. The mayfly breathes by gills, and right at the base of it, it's got these things like this. They look like feathers, like waving back and forth. Those are the gills. So that's how the mayfly gets oxygen, by waving these gills back and forth. So for breathing, we've got, again, I don't know what you think is the coolest. There's the gills that wave back and forth. There's the sticking the tail up to the surface, kind of like a snorkel, to get some air like the water tiger does. There's just, it's amazing that all these animals have found ways to get air. One of my other favorites is the whirligig beetle. And the whirligig beetle does a trick, not like a snorkel, like the water tiger, and not gills. The whirligig beetle kind of has like a scuba tank. So he has a tank of air, and he keeps it attached to the back of his body. So you'll swimming around with this little air bubble attached to the back of him. He's always got it ready, and then goes up and gets another little bubble of air. So it's like a little scuba tank. Now, look at that whirligig beetle. What else do you notice about him that's different from all the other animals we've seen? Where is that whirligig beetle hanging out? Is he deep in the muck? No. Whirligigs hang out on top, on the surface of the pond. Now, think about staying safe. If you're a bug on the surface of the pond, you are like lunch for a bird who is flying overhead. Do you know what they have? This is another one of my very favorite adaptations. They have 4 eyeballs. 2 eyeballs above the water and 2 eyeballs that look below the water. And that's the perfect adaptation because they can see predators coming from above and predators coming from below. So they kind of have a lookout with their 4 eyeballs. I think that's so amazing. I don't know of any other animal in the pond that has that, but whirligig beetles, who otherwise just kind of zoom around on the surface doing figure eights all day, they have 4 eyes to help protect themselves. Pretty cool adaptation. All right, so for our very last bug today, I promised you we'd look at that bug with the red eyes that I found in our scoop of muck, and I finally caught him. This is the one I always have trouble catching. He's kind of crazy and swims around like nuts. He's called a back swimmer. And he's called a back swimmer because he swims on his back. Now, why might that be a good adaptation? Look at the color of his back and the color of his front. So one side of him is white, bright, like silvery white with these bright red eyeballs. That's the part that's his back. So he lies on his back. Meanwhile, the part of him that's showing up to the sky is dark color, it's black color. So think for a minute, why is that a good adaptation? And you know what, this might give you a clue. Penguins use this same trick. Penguins are white on one side and black on the other side. Think about that. Think about when you're swimming around in the water, why that would help keep you safe. And it's because that coloring is camouflage. So back swimmers, these little guys when they're swimming around, if there's a predator down below them, looking up, the sky is bright white when you're underwater. And they can barely see that bright white back swimmer. So he kind of blends into that bright white scene up there. Meanwhile, if a predator is up above and looking down on the back swimmer, the water, the surface of the water looks dark, right? It looks like dark brown. And so does that part of the back swimmer. So the back swimmer blends in if anyone's looking from above, and blends in if anyone's looking for below, because he's black on one side and white on the other side. So that's just like a great camouflage trick to not get found by predators. So remember, the neat thing about all animals really, but especially pond animals, is that every single part of their body is pretty much well designed to do a certain thing. So even though like for the back swimmer, we only talked about the cool camouflage the back swimmer has with front and back, the back swimmer also has amazing little paddle arms to move it really quickly through the water. The back swimmer also has, I discovered from personal experience, a sharp little piercing beak that it uses to get its prey. So animals have not just one, but 2 or 3 or 4, lots of different parts of their body that help it move underwater, breathe underwater, catch prey, stay safe from predators, all these different things that you have to do to survive as an animal in the wild. Their bodies all have different ways to do those things. So we're gonna end today by showing you some pictures of our favorite pond bugs that we caught today. And I want you to see if you can draw a picture. It can be a pretty bad picture, that's fine. But on your picture, label the different adaptations you see. So label the way it's moving, or the body part that helps it breathe, or the body part that helps it eat. And see if you can do that for 1 or 2 of the bugs that we saw today. So here's some pictures to remind you what they look like. And see if you can remember, or look at the pictures and see what parts of the body help it find oxygen and breathe. What parts of its body helps it find food and eat? What parts help it move? And what parts of its body help it stay safe from predators?